Welcome to the EchoCast, episode 64. Ridiculous. I am Bon Diesel, as always, here with myself. This is a Division 2 podcast. I got my first of the cast out of the way, and if you're new, welcome. I mostly talk about Division. Today we'll talk about some other stuff as well. I'll sprinkle in some other things as we go. And if you're old, thanks for coming back. I cannot believe it. So today we will do E3 State of the Game recap, even though that ended up being more of a standard State of the Game. Just a Ubisoft E3 and E3 in general recap and thoughts. Some listener questions and comments, and I will, as always, give some commentary on things and stuff. If you want to support the podcast and a bunch of the other stuff I do, check out patreon.com/theechocast. You can gain exclusive rewards and early access to this podcast and other content when I record it early enough. Otherwise, you get it the same as everyone. I appreciate the support either way. Okay, so State of the Game recap. Pretty simple. We had a little special summary because of E3. We had Rasmus and Hamish this week talking about title update 4, some other stuff, and a brief summary of the E3 conference for Division 2. I will cover that in the next Division 2 news section, so I won't go over that again. There was a short but sweet interview with Terry Spear from Red Storm by Ella. She was at E3 this week, so I suggest checking that out on the VOD on YouTube or Twitch if you want to see him. He didn't really drop anything significant, so I won't mention it other than that, but he's a cool guy, so check it out. And Ella did a great job. Hamish did mention that there's further hit registration issues being looked at, but was pretty clear to not approve of apparently videos that have been made calling him a liar. At this point, I still haven't seen them pop up, and that tends to tell me that the people who made it aren't on my radar, and I'm cool with that. I'll talk about that in a little bit after the break. Hamish did mention that Thylander wanted people to know that the PTS damage numbers on specialized weapons isn't final, so they've been fooling around with the numbers, trying to make all of the specialized weapons useful. Try to, the gunner specialization, make sure it's not over the top, while at the same time trying to make the crossbow and attack 50 actually worth using. Hamish did throw out there that title update 4 will be coming the following week. I'm recording this on the 13th of June, so it's coming the following week. I suspect on the 20th, but they did not give an exact date yet, and we will have to wait. Sometimes they just drop like, hey, we're doing it on Monday. But I still don't think, even at the time of recording, that they have confirmed when it's actually coming out quite yet. They talked again about the mod changes and stuff. I've already talked about that. We've already kind of discussed it, and I think they've already kind of covered it a bit. But basically, they just simplified the mod system and made it just more useful and more attractive to use. Right now, I have builds that don't even have mods on them. So, because I don't have the right ones, it's stupid, and I've played quite a bit. Rasmus did talk about how named weapons, so ones that you get from Cassie Mendoza, and I believe they also drop from conflict caches, will now have unique skins on them. And what that means is they already have unique skins, right? So when you go to Cassie Mendoza and there's a named weapon and you buy it, it's got a little piece of lore to it, and it has a special skin on it. But to actually use the skin on other weapons, you have to get it out of a loot box. I don't know. It's fine. It's whatever. But what's actually, those are the skins that you can take off and put on. So what they're actually doing with named weapons now is they will have a unique actual game, like in-game model skin. So you can put your camouflage skin on the named weapons, but they will still actually look different than a standard variant of that weapon. It's a little change. At the end of the day, it really doesn't change anything. but I actually really love those little details, and I think it's a cool little change. I actually just got a, off the top of my head, I can't remember which gun it is, but the one she was selling this current week, it's actually pretty well rolled for the most part. I just need to replace that first talent. So I like the named weapons. I save them all, really just out of interest or whatever. So small change, but cool. They did talk about the new exotic holster that some people have found in the PTS, and that will be coming in a title update 4. And they talked about how that's actually going to require you do like a quest list to unlock it. It's not just going to be going to a mission and farming. I think that's great. I think that's a good way to do some of this new stuff. They did talk about potentially having cross-account mods. So if you unlock a sturdy whole magazine for the 5.56 on your first character, it's available on all of them. Rasmus kind of talked about that they did not include that on release because they felt like most people would want to replay the game and refarm those things as part of the progression. I get that, but I think a lot of people would actually like to replay the game and have all the mods so that they, maybe it's kind of like a game plus sort of situation. They feel a little extra powerful when they're going through the and that was about it. So I think this was another good episode. Having Rasmus on is great. I think having any of the devs on is great. Obviously, I don't mind when it's Hamish and Yannick or Hamish and Chris or whoever happens to be around. We need a daggone episode with Petter, though. And I get that. I think he has a new role. I think he's doing different stuff, but we need some Petter. Just throwing it out there. And Ella, when she gets back, throw her on. We'll just bring the whole cast. Let's do it. The title update 4 changes are great. I don't think we're seeing anything like hugely game changing. I think the mods is actually a pretty big deal the way it's changing. I think the specialization weapons maybe actually being useful now will be kind of cool and give some people some more incentive to use those. But I think it's putting the game in a better spot than it's currently in, which for what I assume is the episode 1 DLC drop here in a few weeks. I think they've said July, but we don't know if it's the beginning or end or middle. A part of me, they just did a PTS. I kind of hope, especially since it appears this DLC content is all single player, it'd be kind of nice if they didn't do a PTS on this content, in my opinion. I think it'd be nice if this was kind of a surprise. We saw an issue again with the PTS this time, as we pretty much always do. I literally saw a big quote unquote content creator who complained that they had to do the quest for the gunner to show off the minigun on their stream, when this same person has complained that console players shouldn't get the PTS because they don't actually test it. So this person only wanted the gunner to show off on their stream to help get themselves views. And they were basically admitting that they had zero desire to actually test the game. And that, in my opinion, is hilarious in one way and infuriating in another. It's the PTSs are a really good idea. I think that even if people don't test anything and don't give feedback, they probably still get a ton of really useful information. But it's just funny that, some of the quote unquote hardcore people in the community who are creators and stuff just use it as a preview and as a way to try to get a few more subs and stuff. And yeah, that's a bit frustrating, but it is what it is. So I actually hope they don't do one for episode 1. I would like that to be a complete surprise for everyone, including myself. And I also get that people don't love that they don't, mention every single bug or every single imbalance that's going on in the game. Every single state of the game, I feel like I see people piping up about, what about PvP? Why aren't you guys talking about that? They typically do mention it. They didn't this time, but they normally at least acknowledge it. But they just, if they talked about every single issue with the game at every single state of the game, we would get like 10 minutes of new interesting information and like an hour and a half of discussions about things going on. At the end of the day, I suggest that if there's something going on with the game that's just so bad in your opinion, if it's been acknowledged and you've submitted, your thoughts on the forums and all that, and it's just not where you want it, then I suggest maybe checking out a different game and come on back during the next update. Pay attention. You can check me out. I'll be more than happy to throw out that information for you. But it's kind of a PR thing to a point. They just want to give out some cool information. They want to get people a little bit hyped. They do want to address issues when they're there. But it's not bug corner with Hamish. It's it's a state of the game. It's a hey, here's some cool stuff that's going on. So there's my thoughts on that. Okay, so for the E3 summary, so Division 2 released a bit of news. Mostly they kind of detailed all of the episodes of Year 1. Just as a reminder, Year 1 is all free. This came with anyone who bought the game. You get the Year 1 pass for free, or at least the Year 1 DLC. So it's episode 1, 2, and 3. Episode 1 is supposed to come out here in July, and they detailed it. So as I've gathered, basically it's 2 new story missions. One is at a presidential compound, which I believe is actually going to be Camp David. If you don't know what that is, I suggest looking it up. It's like a secure compound where the president of the United States can go and kind of be secluded. They do lots of high-level meetings. I believe it's actually a evacuation area for the president as well, if there's an emergency. I believe after 9/11, Bush may have gone there until they kind of figured out what was going on. So that was one mission. Another one's going to be at the DC Zoo, which should be really cool. The first one at the compound, you're hunting a trader. Apparently they're kind of keeping that under wraps. So I don't know if that's going to be like a rogue division agent, which would be super cool, because if you think about it, we don't fight any rogue division agents, at least not yet. So that'd be kind of cool if there was a unique boss at the end of that mission where you're fighting another division agent. Maybe it's Kelso. Everyone thinks that she's a traitor. We'll have to see. The zoo mission, you're actually hunting down the outcast leader. So if you remember at the end of Roosevelt Island, you find out that their leader got away. Emmeline or whatever her name is, I can't remember off the top of my head. So on top of those 2 missions, so one, if you're a Division 1 player, hurrah, we are getting new missions. If you played Division 1, you know that other than the incursions that were added, we never got new missions. So the 10 or 15 missions that were in Division 1 on release were the same missions we were playing 3 years later. So yes. The other thing is a new mode called Expeditions. Now they make it sound like there's going to be multiple expeditions. This first one takes place at, I believe it's Kenley College. I'm not honestly sure if that's a real place or not, but it's probably modeled after a real college, if not. And basically, it's like an exploration mode. So the impression I get is that there's going to be a combination of clearing 3 different areas. You clear one after the other. So I assume there's going to be some kind of unique boss mechanics, and you go to a part of the map. So I assume this is going to be its own little map, because you have to go there via helicopter, I believe. And you fight in the first area, you clear it, fight in the second, and then the third. And when you beat the third area, a treasure room will open up. That's going to have a bunch of special rewards. I assume loot, probably some collectibles and so on. Apparently there's also going to be some puzzles and some other content that you go back to the areas you fought in to try to figure out and find, which I think is great. I think that's a cool little mechanic. These kind of sound like they're going to be like little mini maps that you get to go to and do stuff. So the big detail about it is that it sounds like there's basically a challenge mode in these 3 rooms that you clear. I'm assuming there's going to be different difficulties as well. And it looks like there's going to be like leaderboards, potentially. I'm sorry if I just made a crazy loud noise. And it appears that you can actually get rated for completing these missions, these little 3 mini missions, from, I believe it's like silver, like bronze, gold, silver, or something like that. And it's all timed. So if you achieve a gold rank on all 3 parts, you get some special rewards and stuff like that. I love this. I think this is really cool. I'm not going to say it's the long-term replayable content I think a lot of us want and need right now. But I think it sounds fun. I also suspect there's going to be a bunch of other stuff, maybe some little side missions and stuff like that as well. I assume a new event, a new clothing event. I imagine there's going to be some other little details that they haven't quite revealed yet. But from a high level, this episode 1 sounds really good, and it's coming in July. Episode 2 is coming in the fall, or autumn, as they say. And they lightly detailed it, talking about it's going to be at the Pentagon. We're going to be fighting Black Tusk, who have taken over the Pentagon and are trying to extract secrets from it that can help out their cause. That's kind of all they said. Now, I believe that the Pentagon is going to be a spiritual successor to Underground. That every time you go there, you're going to run through various phases or something like that with different types of goals. And fighting different types of enemies and so on and so forth. But I suspect we'll get more details about that after episode 1 releases. And then episode 3 was honestly a way bigger drop than I expected. I thought at E3 we may get some details about episode 1, like some significant details. I had no idea they were going to drop a huge info bomb, in my opinion, about episode 3 and reveal to us that not only are we going to jump back on the hunt for Keener, apparently, at least that's the way it seems, but we're not even going to do it in DC, but we're actually going back to New York. Now, I hesitate to say that we're going back to New York City because in a little trailer, which I've watched the trailer 100 times now just because it's just cool to see, you see 3 Division 2 agents wearing summer gear and all that kill a cleaner in Coney Island. So I assume they're hinting to us that maybe we won't be back in Manhattan proper. I still wouldn't completely count that out, but you know, let's be realistic to a point. I doubt that they updated the entire Manhattan map for one DLC, even though that'd be really cool. But we're going back to New York, and that's awesome. They mentioned the word manhunt, so I don't know if that's supposed to be a reference to PvP type of mode, but it definitely gives a serious push towards the idea that we're going after Keener, after someone who we used to call brother, is what they say. And they talk about trying to bring back the virus and all that. Keener has the virus printer and has the scientist who can help him do another dollar flu. So I'm excited. I was super pumped. That trailer got me going. I did not expect that one bit. And yeah, should be fun. That's supposed to come, I believe, in January or February of 2020. The years people need to keep in mind. Year 1 is March of 19 to, I assume, February of 20. And I'll talk about how I think that's going to go after the mid-roll. Then the last little bit, they talked about they're doing a free weekend. So if you're listening to this over the weekend, they're doing a free weekend. So if you have any friends that were hesitant about the game, you can bring them in. You can play with them for free. They keep their progress if they end up buying the game later. There's actually, I think, like a 40% off deal right now in some places to get the game. Some people are, having their lovely commentary on doing this. I obviously the eternal optimist with Division. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think, they're trying to sell some more copies, and there's never a better time to do it than around E3. But what do I know? I'm just a shill. So that was most of the Division news. I'll discuss some other stuff in a bit. For other Ubisoft news from their conference, they showed some more of Breakpoint. I don't want to completely judge this game until I get to play like at least the beta build and really the final build. I'm sure I'm gonna buy this game. I'm sure I'm gonna play it a decent amount. I will say so far what I am actually really enthusiastic about is I suspect that while there's definitely some gameplay choices that they're making with Breakpoint that I think are just moving in the wrong direction, even worse than Wildlands, I actually have some faith that the story of Breakpoint is going to be really cool. So one of my big issues with Wildlands, among many, was that the story was just hilariously bad, and I did not give a shit. And good Lord, I just could not care less. To the point where I think they kind of knew that, and they did all of these goofy cameos from the Predator and Splinter Cell, which I know everyone was pumped about, but at the end of the day, it was kind of weak. I do think it was cool that they did the Breakpoint crossover where they introduced, you know, the bad guy from Breakpoint, and you actually help him out in Wildlands. They did a Division crossover. They did, to me, it was just screaming of, we didn't provide a lot of good stuff here, so here's some goofy stuff that you can also do. It looks like Breakpoint's going to have this as well, with having a Terminator crossover for some reason. I don't know. I've got faith that the game will be fun. I've got faith that the story is going to be better than Wildlands, I hope. I'm not a fan, you know, I've talked at length about this, so I won't gabber on too much about it, but it doesn't need to be an RPG. I don't want... The Division is definitely a unique game for me. I don't like Destiny, I don't like Warframe, I didn't like Anthem. I'm not into these type of games, really. I've come to the realization that I may even like Division 2, despite the fact that it's an RPG, way less so than because it's an RPG. I don't mind, it's just I never really played RPGs before Division 2, and while I've definitely gotten to enjoy the genre, mostly just because of Division having a realistic aesthetic combined with RPG mechanics, and it's why I suspect I haven't gotten into other games. And it's weird because Breakpoint seems to be trying to do this thing, and I see all these comparisons with Division, which I get it. I actually compare it more to like Assassin's Creed, because the mechanics aren't as deep as Division. And what's interesting is it kind of seems like the RPG aspects of Breakpoint just aren't very good. So then it makes me wonder, like, why do it? Like, it feels like they're you know, square peg round hole in it. You know, they're just making it happen. It seems like it's a directive, and at Ubisoft, you know, Assassin's Creed became an RPG, which I actually thought was a really good fit. But then they did it to Far Cry, which was the stupidest thing I've ever seen. And now they're doing it to Ghost Recon, and somewhere Tom Clancy is rolling in his grave, if he really cares. I don't know, but I don't know. That said, which is probably not going to help my case, I did submit an application to join the Delta Squad as a streamer. I think it's interesting. Ghost Recon has a really passionate fan base, and I would consider myself part of that, but I'm a fan of it from 2001, the first one that came out, and it was a very different game. Even up to Future Soldier, which I know some people actually didn't like because they didn't like the direction it took. Future Soldier's still my favorite one. And there's like a group of fans with Breakpoint who are gonna like it no matter what it is. I know some of them personally, they're awesome, and I am super pumped for them that they're excited about it despite some of the things I don't like about the changes. But at the same time, they're kind of fanboys for Ghost Recon the way I am with Division. So basically, no matter what Ghost Recon does, they're going to back it up and like it and be excited for it. I realize that I'm kind of taking a role that other people have taken in Division, which I think I take more than people give me credit for, but that is what it is. That I love Ghost Recon, I love the franchise, and I just want to see it be really cool again. And I think what we're getting isn't its potential. So if they let me onto the Delta Squad, which I kind of doubt, I'm going to be more than happy to congratulate the game where it gets things right, and I'm going to be more than happy to criticize it where I think it's wrong. And yeah, we'll see. But I am still excited about it. I think the story is going to be really good. I'm just a little worried about like everything else. So we'll see. I was really impressed with myself, of course. That Elite Squad was announced. Unfortunately, it's a mobile game, but it's a XCOM type of game. So if you listen to the last episode, I believe it was Nitro asked me what genres I would like to see a Tom Clancy game do that it doesn't currently do. And one of those was a Division XCOM type of like strategy type of game, turn-based mechanics. Now, this Elite Squad is not going to be Division only. It looks like it's every game in the franchise. Splinter Cell, Rainbow Six, Division. I'm sure there are some other ones. So it's going to be some microtransaction filled mobile game. So I'm not super hopeful about it, but it's still neat that they're even doing it. And I kind of patted myself on the back a little bit for predicting that. Rainbow Six Quarantine got announced for some reason. If anyone played in that event in Rainbow Six, I think it was last year, where it was kind of like a Left 4 Dead type of game. I mean, it was fun. I actually had a lot of fun with it. It was neat. To get to play as those operators in like a co-op PvE type of game. But but why? I just don't know why. Like, why is it? It just feels a little bit like a money grab to me. Just like, hey, you guys kind of like that, and you want to pay us? Because I don't even know. I don't know if they put prices on it yet. I swear it better not be $60. I suspect it'll be 20 or 30 as like a kind of an expansion, like a standalone expansion. I don't know. It must have been popular enough when they did the event that it warranted making a entire game based on it. It does bring them back those Left 4 Dead vibes, which I know a lot of people miss. So I'm sure it'll find an audience. But when I had heard rumors that there was going to be like a standalone Rainbow Six game that was going to be like PvE, I was really hoping it was going to be like like a harkening back to the old Rainbow Six. I also kind of came to terms with the fact that it was probably just going to be an expanded quarantine mode. But, is what it is. Maybe I'll play it. Maybe I won't. I don't know. And then the last bit of Ubisoft news that I thought was kind of cool was Watch Dogs 3. I never played the first one. Unfortunately, if you don't know, the Ubisoft downgrades games meme basically started with the first Watch Dogs. If you go back and watch like E3 footage of Watch Dogs 1 before it came out, it was a game that like you almost can't even make today. It was just, the lofty expectations were just insane for that game. And then it came out and it had been, to say it was downgraded both gameplay and visually is a understatement. And unfortunately, shortly after that came Division, which, while I will still argue that game met most of the expectations it set, it also suffered from a similar issue. So Ubisoft went through kind of a weird time for a few years. I personally think that they've rebounded completely from that, but I'm just a shill. So I never got into Watch Dogs. Watch Dogs 2 had kind of this hipster thing to it, which I didn't care for. So I never got into it. I've heard it's okay. But this one definitely, Watch Dogs 3 looks really interesting. It has this mechanic where you don't really play as one character. You basically switch characters the entire game. And if you have a character you really like to play as, they can die, and it's permadeath. So your game doesn't end, but you no longer can play as that person. So this game, it seems that some of the things they're setting expectations for are pretty lofty. Maybe at the end of a generation, they can really squeeze every little bit of memory out, and they know exactly how to make this thing work, and maybe it'll meet expectations. I'm a little worried it won't, but I'll be hopeful. Maybe I'll buy it, maybe I won't. We'll have to wait and see. I'll definitely be keeping my eye on it though. Other than Ubisoft stuff and Division, I mean, my big highlight was basically getting a kind of mediocre conference from Xbox. I'm gonna buy the new Xbox console. As we now know, it's going to release in the winter or the holiday time of 2020 next year. Hopefully by then I'm not broke from having a baby. And they didn't give as much information as I think some people expected. I think people need to realize that obviously next year is going to be the big drop of all the numbers, and I wouldn't even be surprised if Xbox actually does a lot of that at their own conference. I think that they gave a bunch of good previews. Obviously, seeing some Master Chief stuff was cool. Some Gear stuff was neat. I do agree with a lot of people that the complete lack of gameplay being shown for anything is kind of annoying. That was kind of an issue with E3 as a whole this year. I felt there was a whole lot of trailers, of cinematic trailers, and not a whole lot of gameplay. So I'm excited for a new Xbox, any new games that come with it. I suspect I'll be a pre-order first day user. I am pumped. There's a new Elite controller coming. May actually hold off on that because I want to make sure that I have two good controllers, and I see no reason to buy a controller now where there may be a whole new type of controller with the new Xbox. Apparently all accessories will work, so if you want to buy an Elite 2, it should work with the new Xbox, but I kind of want to wait and see what they're going to have on the standard controller. Obviously there was a ton of other stuff. I'm not really going to go into it now, but maybe I'll talk about it in a different episode or during a stream. But yeah, I thought it was a nice E3. I don't think it was, you know, the best E3 that's ever been had, but I think next year will be really cool. But I think it was a nice little, you know, tide over while, you know, we all wait for the next gen next year. And speaking of waiting, it's mid-roll time. Okay, so some community topics and discussion. So I'm just gonna riff a bit on the state of the Division 2, in my opinion. So so I think the best way to start this conversation is to say, how am I currently playing the game? And to be totally honest, at this point, I'm basically logging on every day for 30 minutes to an hour, and knocking out attachment projects and killing some deck of 52 bosses. That's about all I'm doing right now. I'm doing screenshots still. I'm still working on that project. I've knocked out 2 or 3 of the areas, and I'm, you know, slowly working my way across the map to do more of them. But I mean, I've definitely hit kind of a thing where, you know, I attempted the raid a couple times with some people. Honestly, the rewards aren't really good enough that I care to keep doing it. You know, obviously at this point people have figured out a pretty good way of getting it done. I just don't have any real interest in it, at least not right now. Maybe later on I will. But I mean, that's kind of the extent of my playing. Now, that said, I'm not mad, I'm not angry, I'm not throwing fits like some other people are. For me, honestly, I'm just busy. I'm preparing for a baby. I'm, you know, doing stuff around our house and playing sports again, and I'm just trying to do other stuff. I'll be excited for the first DLC. I'm sure I'll jump on and play a ton of it, and I'm sure I'll do the same with the other DLCs and, you know, anything else that comes out in between. If they ever get PvP in a state where it's a little more fun, I'd be more than happy to jump into that. But I think for me, it's just kind of a thing of, I mean, the game's giving me what I want. I think I'm at like 250 or 300 hours already. The first like couple months of the game being out, I've got my money's worth already, so I'm happy. But I am still, you know, I still want to see more. I want to do some more stuff, and I think there's some trouble in how many people seem like personally offended that this game hasn't provided them 2,000 hours of content already. That's fine. Everyone's got their own prerogative. I just also think that maybe these type of people wouldn't be happy no matter what was happening right now. I don't think there's really any game that is meant to be the only game you play 7 days a week for 8 hours a day. I saw a lot of complaints about Division, and I still do at times, that, you know, you can tell that there were creators who expected this game to be their road to fame. They were going to become partnered, and they were going to become full-time streamers and YouTube video makers, and it's not that game. It's not that game. It just isn't, and that's fine. I highly doubt there was a single dev while making this game that was like, man, I really hope people can make entire careers off of this game. I suspect there were a lot more devs saying, man, this will be cool, I hope they enjoy playing this. I don't think there's anything wrong with people wanting to be full-timers off of games and doing this stuff, but I just don't think, you know, and there's gonna be people who are saying like, well, so-and-so did that with Division 1. The content creation world is very, very different than it was in 2016. If Division 2 came out in 2016, there'd probably be plenty of people who could get careers off of it. The simple fact is that it's just a different environment now. It's just, there's so, you know, everyone streams. Everyone has a YouTube, everyone has a Twitter and has a following, has a Patreon, patreon.com/theechocast, by the way, just one more little plug. Uh, but you know, everyone's got their own prerogative now. You know, it seems like everyone has a podcast now. Like, it's a different game than it used to be. You know, when it comes to content creation and becoming a full timer and stuff. And I think that there's a lot of people who want to be full timers who can't, who don't have the equipment, mentally and personality wise. I put myself in that category. I simply don't have the motivation, and I don't think I'm interesting enough to be a full timer. That's why this is my hobby. I look at it like a part-time job. It's something I enjoy doing. It's something that, you know, I can almost break even with, maybe one day financially, all the investments I've made in equipment and stuff like that. But I'm not looking to quit my job, and give up my health care and give up my 20, you know, my 15, 20 days of vacation a year, paid vacation. It's not a thing. And I'm seeing a lot, and it's not all of it. The game isn't perfect. It's got issues. I'm not denying that. But I'm seeing a lot of the anger and resentment I've seen about Division 2 has been expectations that people set themselves that were not influenced at all by anyone else. I think if you look at the way this game was marketed and pushed out, they've provided exactly what people should have expected, in my opinion. You know, things like player population and stuff, you know, they're doing a free weekend. I've seen some people say that it reeks of desperation and stuff. I mean, maybe it does. I think that they're just a company trying to get some sales off of E3 and a bunch of announcements like they did. But, you know, I think the way you look at everything with a game or just in life is basically going to depend on what you want, what your opinion already is. So if you think the Division sucks and that it's a failed game and it's dead, and you see a free weekend, you're going to assume they're desperate and trying to get players. If you're someone who likes the game, and thinks it's doing pretty well, you're going to see it as just a good opportunity to get more people in to check it out. So, you know, and then you see people talking about Division 1 and stuff like that. I've already mentioned all that. You know, the Division 1, people are looking back with very, very, very clear hindsight, it seems. And I think it's kind of comical, you know, the way people are acting like Division 1 was this perfect game at 1.8.3 and are conveniently ignoring all of the significant flaws that game has to this day. Some of the very flaws that I think Division 2 has improved on, yet some people still think that Division 1 did it better, but everyone has an opinion, right? And then when it comes down to the future, so year 1, you know, we know about all of the DLC that's coming. We have at least sparse details about it all. It seems like it's going to end with quite the bang in New York City with the 3rd DLC. And one thing I think people need to be prepared for is year 2 of the DLC. And people need to probably be prepared for the idea that it's probably going to be paid. I don't know that. I have no proof. But year 1 was free. It came with the game. And I think people should probably expect a $20, $30, maybe $40 year 2 pass that will give them all the DLC. There's a very real possibility that some type of survival mode may be involved in that. I don't know. I will say though, they seemed pretty determined during the marketing of Division 2 that they didn't want to split up the player base, so they very well may not make year 2 a paid season. Maybe they'll do 3 DLCs for free and do a season 2 pass that gives hopefully more benefits than the season 1 pass. You know, the little side missions are cool and stuff, but you know, some early access to the DLCs will be nice once they start rolling out. But you know, I would buy the season pass just to support the game. I will say that the season pass for Division 1 year 1 or Division 2 year 1 has been a bit underwhelming so far, but I didn't buy it to get a bunch of free stuff, to get extra stash space. I'm seeing that stuff popping up again. So, you know, the game's not perfect. If anyone ever thought it was going to be, they were fooling themselves. And honestly, I think the game has issues. There's issues with loot. There's significant issues with PvP. There's absolutely more to do in Division 2 than there ever was to do in Division 1, but people still don't find it as satisfying. And I get that. But I still think that that people's opinions on Division 2 are still very, very much based on what they wanted before the game even came out. The same people who were poo-pooing it before it even released are still poo-pooing it today. The same people who were excited for it before it released still seem excited for it today. It seems like it's mostly self-fulfilled prophecies, and that's just the way I think it's gonna go. That's also on a relatively small window I have on the player base and just the people that I know or pay attention to. And I don't know. Overall, I think Division 2, I think it's a great game. I can't wait for some more content for it, and I suspect a lot of other people feel the same. Let's see. So sensational creators. I've already kind of covered this in my little rant right there, but yeah, just be wary of who you're paying attention to. Apparently, there's still people, desperately trying to gain relevance, and become full timers, straight off Division 2 only, and doing it in some pretty suspect ways. If you see video channels that every title is all caps, you see dramatic faces and thumbnails with gigantic capitalized font, I would steer clear. Just my suggestion, and we'll move on from there. Okay, so listener questions. We have a Hero 1897. Do you have any specific builds you like running on both the open world and or the raid? I have a raid build that I was using a bit until I kind of just gave up. An LMG build that it's actually really powerful. I need to fiddle with it a bit, but I'm now leaving my builds alone until Title Update 4, since there's so many big changes coming with that. Just in general, I actually have a skill build. People I see everywhere, the skill builds are terrible and you can't use them and they're useless. I have a solo skill build that works super well in missions as well with matchmaking, where I basically always have Seeker Mines, and my turret lasts forever, does a ton of damage, and almost immediately comes back every time it dies. And I do damage. I do solid damage. So that's been my favorite build. I'm basically just combining a bunch of skill cooldown, skill use length, and chances for automatic reset of the skills, the cooldowns. Other than that, I have a high damage to elites build, a high damage build in general that I really enjoy if I just want to go just kill a bunch of stuff. And I've been working on like a sniper build, a DMR build, even I have a decent SMG build and a PvP build, two separate ones. The SMG build is fun just because I love hearing the vector fire, 1,000 rounds a minute. But it's just, you have to reload so often. It's not really that useful, but it's just fun to use. Apparently I'm the only person on earth who has like 5 or 6 builds that I find fun and decent. But what do I know? I'm definitely not a build master, so I go more for fun than anything. We had a little special request by Joe Polidoro. I may regret doing this. I'm terrified to find out what this is for, but I'm going to assume it's for a good cause. But Piper Dog, best dog. So there's your sound clip. I'm a little concerned of what it's going to turn into, but we'll think happy thoughts. And then on YouTube, Golden Ferrari asked the question, do you think we'll see a Black Tusk in episode 3? And what's the game mode for episode 2? So I'll answer the second one first. The game mode for episode 2, that's the Pentagon for Division 2, episode 2. And like I said earlier, I'm pretty certain it's not going to be underground. I don't think we're going to see underground again. I don't think we're going to see survival again. But with both of them, I think we'll get kind of spiritual successors, and I think that the Pentagon will be kind of a spiritual successor to the underground. When it comes to Black Tusk in episode 3, that's a really good question actually, because we saw the agents take down one of Joe Farrow's boys, one of the cleaners. So I assume we're definitely going to be fighting the cleaners. If you've paid attention to a bunch of the intel in Division 2, there's a whole section of it just based on what's going on back in New York City. And basically, there's no mention of the rioters, but it says, I think that the Rikers have kind of, after Lorraine Barrett died, they kind of lost their power, but they're still kind of palling around. that the LMB has turned into a bunch of small pockets of their soldiers just trying to stay alive. But that the cleaners without Pharaoh are actually, they're smaller in number, but more dangerous than ever. So I don't know if we're only going to fight cleaners. You have to consider that they're going to have to try to port over and upgrade, make all of the, if they're going to do all of the factions from Division 1, that's a pretty tall order that I just don't know if it's a real thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we only fight the cleaners. The interesting thing about your question about the Black Tusk, though, is that the Black Tusk, if here's a spoiler alert for the book and the comics, you basically find out that they're going all over the eastern half of the United States, taking over fuel dumps because who controls the fuel probably controls the future of the country, at least in the short term. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all if we have Black Tusk in New York City. It seems almost guaranteed to a point, because I'm sure there's some important strategic locations in the city that they would be interested in. Now, my theory, this is a fan theory, I have no idea if this is true or not, but I think there's some reason to suspect it, is I think in Division 1, the LMB were kind of like a rogue battalion of a PMC, a private military contractor called the LMB, that was there to protect Wall Street under Colonel Bliss. But then everything went down, they quarantined the island, and Bliss did his own thing. My guess, and what I think has been suggested to a point, is that the LMB actually folded into, or maybe became, the whole organization, not just the battalion in New York City. You have to consider that was only a small portion of the LMB. I actually get the feeling that the rest of the LMB became Black Tusk. So yeah, I'll definitely be curious. And there's some good hints to that in the Grand Washington Hotel mission. You can actually see that there was a banquet being held with Colonel Bliss was there, and you see that the sponsors of the banquet were the gear brand that Black Tusk uses, the electronics company that all of their special little devices are made by, and the LMB. So I have a pretty strong suspicion that that we may see them. That's a good question. So thanks for that. Golden Ferrari, Joe, and Hero, thank you very much for your questions. If you have questions, be sure to ask on Twitter, in my Discord, or in the YouTube comments. To wrap it up here, content updates. I did do a E3 summary and reaction video for the Division News. I went into a little bit more depth than I did here in the podcast, so if you want to check that out, check out my YouTube. It's just under Bond Diesel. We are going to do the Baby Diesel shower stream soon. I got the Game Pass for $1 for like 2 years. So I downloaded a whole bunch of games, and I bought FIFA because it was actually on sale because of the World Cup. Baby Diesel and I used to actually play FIFA quite a bit. And we're going to mess with that. I downloaded Rocket League as well. And we have there's a few other games I may see she wants to check out. So be on the lookout for that. I'll put out some kind of announcement or something about that. I do plan on continuing the podcast even after the baby is born, but I wouldn't be surprised if the streams cut back. I'm already kind of unhappy with how consistent I've been on the streams, but between playing volleyball again, our birthing classes, and just being busy, it's been hard for me to stick with it. So I appreciate the patience. We'll get to it again one day, and you guys aren't going to get rid of me yet. So there's that. If you like the podcast, please follow on whatever platform you're using. If you're on iTunes, please rate the podcast and leave a review. I really love hearing the thoughts. If you check out the podcast on YouTube, be sure to follow and subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment. I would love to hear from you, either your opinions or your questions. I am on Twitch, where I try to stream multiple times a week, and on Twitter, both as Bond Diesel, where you can see my other musings. And that's all I have. So, till next time. Somewhat more detailed summary of what is coming. What? I do. I was in the flow. I was going. Ugh. I'm just kidding. Hey. Well, I appreciate that, babe. Come over here and give me a kiss. Like a big old deuce. I'm gonna put all this in at the beginning of my episode. Be gone.